When you think about 19th century novels, you probably picture dusty old books and stuffy drawing rooms, right? But what if I told you they were actually the blockbuster thrillers of their day? A direct and often terrified response to a world being completely turned upside down by new technology and social chaos. Okay, let's get into this.
First, a question to get us started. Where does true horror really come from? I mean, is it from some monster in a faraway land? Or could it be something much, much closer to home? Well, the Victorians had a pretty shocking new answer to that question.
You see, for a long time, horror meant Gothic horror. We're talking haunted castles, ancient curses, spooky monsters in some remote corner of the world. But then, in the mid-19th century, a whole new genre just exploded onto the scene, sensation fiction. And with it, the entire landscape of fear shifted. Terror moved out of those distant haunted castles and right into the cheerful-looking house next door. The monster wasn't some beast from the past. It could be your neighbor or even your spouse, living and breathing in the here and now.
So what on earth caused such a dramatic change in storytelling? Well, it all starts with the incredibly chaotic world they were living in.
The Victorian period was an age of just massive transformation, all fueled by the Industrial Revolution. People were flooding from the countryside into these new, sprawling cities, and of course this created a society with brand new problems and brand new anxieties. It really demanded a new kind of story to make sense of it all.
And the first huge source of that anxiety was the city itself. For a lot of people, it was a terrifying new world. On the one hand, yeah, the city offered all this incredible opportunity, but on the other, it was a place of deep poverty, crime, and just despair. Authors like Charles Dickens, well, they became masters at capturing this tension, showing their readers the dark underbelly that was always lurking just beneath the surface of progress. Which brings us to the next great anxiety, that massive and growing gap between the new rich and the exploited poor, and a really deep fear of where that division might eventually lead.
And maybe no one took this fear to its terrifying logical conclusion better than H.G. Wells. In his novel The Time Machine, he didn't just write about the class divide of his own time, he shot it way into the future, creating this dystopian vision as a stark warning.
In his future, humanity has literally split into two different species. You've got the Eloi living on the surface. They're beautiful, but they're frail and intellectually, well, vacant. They've been made weak by their total dependency on technology. But their little paradise is powered by the Morlocks, a brutal subterranean working class who've been exploited for so long they've become monstrous. It's such a powerful metaphor for the class system of his own time. So Wells was using science fiction to make some really sharp critiques of his society. He was warning that this unchecked idea of progress could actually make us weaker, that industrialization could destroy the environment, and that the social choices they were making right then would have terrifying consequences way down the line.
But as frightening as the cities and factories were, the deepest anxieties the Victorians had were often found in the one place that was supposed to be a sanctuary, the home.
And this is where sensation fiction really truly broke new ground. It was a genre that found its horror in the everyday. Its subject matter was famously described as being wild yet domestic. The secrets weren't buried in some crypt, they were hiding in the parlor. The monster wasn't a vampire, it was the person you trusted most.
These novels were so popular that they actually developed a kind of formula for maximum shock value. It usually starts with a perfectly respectable family that's hiding some huge secret. Bigamy was a big one. Then, a shocking identity reveal turns everything upside down, and this all leads to a climax of blackmail, madness, or even murder, which ends up shaking the very foundations of the proper, middle-class family.
But what was so radical about these stories is that they often gave a voice to characters who were usually silenced, especially women. So, and this is the crucial point, a woman who commits some terrible act isn't just painted as a monster. Instead, the story explores how she became a victim of an unequal society that trapped her and left her with no other choice.
And that brings us to the most radical secret these novels revealed. The idea that the true villain wasn't a person at all, but the systems of society itself.
Just think about that for a second. In a world that prized order and the rule of law, these hugely popular novels were suggesting that the law itself could be the antagonist, an unjust force that actually created victims.
Wilkie Collins's novel No Name is a perfect example. The entire story is driven by the fact that the heroines are disinherited because their parents weren't legally married when they were born. As the novel puts it, they are victims of a law that visits the sins of the parents on the children. An unjust law, not a ghost or a monster, is the force that completely ruins their lives.
So ultimately, sensation fiction was tapping into the core anxiety of a rapidly changing world. That old, knowable community was gone. In its place was a new society where appearances could be totally deceiving and where you could no longer be sure that your friends, your neighbors, or even your own family were who you thought they were.
So the fiction of the 19th century really acted as a mirror, reflecting back the deepest fears of a society in turmoil, which it leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? What anxieties, what hidden secrets about our own rapidly changing world are being reflected in the stories that we just can't seem to put down today?